Hi, and welcome to Historical Influence. When we hear the word Silk Road, we often imagine a single, continuous highway of stone stretching across the horizon, filled with romantic images of camel caravans and bustling bazaars. But the reality is far more complex. The idea of a structured, regular Great Silk Road is, in many ways, a modern myth. In ancient and medieval times, there was no single road. Instead, there was a vast, shifting network of trails and itineraries that wove together continents, connecting the Yellow River in China to the Mediterranean Sea. The story of these routes often begins with the Han Dynasty in China. Around 130 BCE, the emperor dispatched an envoy named Zhang Chan on a secret mission into Central Asia. His journey was not initially for trade, but for diplomacy and intelligence, to forge alliances against nomadic enemies like the Jianghu. Yet, these early diplomatic missions opened the floodgates. They revealed to China the existence of sophisticated urban centers in the West, sparking a desire for exchange that would shape the world. However, trade existed long before the empires officially sanctioned it. Archaeological evidence suggests that long-distance trade was often conducted by middlemen, moving high-value, low-volume goods like jade, glass, and of course, silk. But it wasn't just goods that traveled. As we look back at the origins, we see that this network was a conduit for the very fabric of civilization. Ideas, inventions, and cultures flowed across thousands of miles of desert and mountain. In the early days, specifically the first period from the 1st century BCE to the 3rd century CE, the trade was driven by the appetite of superpowers. Chinese coins penetrated into Central Asia, while distinct coins from Parthia and even Rome have been found along these routes, hinting at a global economy in its infancy. This was the dawn of the Road of Legends, a path not just of commerce, but of connection. The Silk Road was never merely a neutral zone of commerce. It was a chessboard for empires. Control over these routes meant power, and where there is power, there is conflict. In the early centuries of the Common Era, the region was dominated by heavyweights like the Kushan Empire, which expanded into the Tarim Basin, and later the Sasanian Empire of Persia. These powers dictated the terms of trade. For instance, from the 4th to the mid-7th centuries, Sasanian silver drachms became the international currency of the Silk Road, found by archaeologists all the way from Uzbekistan to the borders of China. But power is fragile. By the 7th century, the Tang dynasty of China exerted massive influence, stationing military garrisons in Central Asian cities like Suyab to secure trade and collect taxes. Yet this dominance was challenged by the rise of the Arab Caliphate. The Arab conquests brought Islam to Central Asia, shifting the cultural and economic axis of the Silk Road once again, replacing Sasanian silver with Islamic dirhams. The struggle for this region did not end in the Middle Ages. It evolved into the 19th century geopolitical rivalry known as the Great Game between the British and Russian empires. This was a shadow war fought by spies and mapmakers. Officers like the Russian captain Nikolai Muraviev and the British captain Arthur Connolly ventured into the Khanates of Khiva and Bukhara, often in disguise. The stakes were incredibly high. The British feared that Russia would use the Silk Road cities as staging grounds to invade India. The Russians, expanding southward, sought to secure their frontiers and open markets for their goods. This era was defined by espionage. Men like Alexander Burns traveled in local dress to map the routes, while Russian agents like Vitkovich courted Afghan emirs to gain influence. It was a deadly game. In 1842, in the city of Bukhara, the British officers Stoddard and Connolly, the very man who coined the phrase, "the Great Game," were executed by the emir,
their heads severed in a public square. The dust of the Silk Road is mixed with the blood of those who sought to control it.
While empires fought for control, merchants and monks were busy changing the world through the Great Exchange. We call it the Silk Road, but silk was just one currency. One of the most profound secrets to travel these routes was the technology of paper. Invented in China by Kai Lun in 105 CE, paper was originally made from mulberry bark, hemp, and rags. It was a revolutionary technology, cheaper than silk and lighter than bamboo. This secret eventually traveled west, famously following the Battle of Talas in 751 CE, reaching Samarkand and Baghdad, and forever altering how humanity recorded its history. The exchange of food was equally transformative. The Silk Road was a melting pot of flavors. It is believed that noodles journeyed from China to the West, influencing Italian pasta, while spices, fruits, and recipes, like the Central Asian dish lagman, blended culinary traditions from the Far East to the Mediterranean. But perhaps the most enduring cargo was religion. Buddhist monks were among the most dedicated travelers. In the 2nd century, Kushan missionaries and translators like Lokakshema brought Mahayana Buddhism into China. Monks traveled with merchant caravans for safety, establishing monasteries that doubled as hostels. The famous Chinese monk Xuanzang journeyed to India in the 7th century to collect sacred scriptures, leaving a legacy of artistic and spiritual connection that survives to this day. It wasn't just Buddhism. The Silk Road was a lifeline for Jewish communities as well. Persian Jews, traders, and craftspeople settled along the route, leaving behind Hebrew inscriptions on ossuaries in places like Merv, modern-day Turkmenistan, dating back to the 5th century. Sogdian merchants, the Phoenicians of Central Asia, played a crucial role. Their language became the lingua franca of the road, used by Turks, Chinese, and Persians alike to conduct business. They carried Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, and Christianity across the steppe. This flow of knowledge, forbidden or sacred, shaped the civilizations we know today. To travel the Silk Road was to court death. The geography itself was a killer. Travelers faced the roof of the world in the Pamirs and the scorching sands of the Taklamakan Desert, a name which ominously translates to "go in and you won't come out." In the 19th century, explorers like Francis Younghusband battled frostbite and altitude sickness at 18,000 feet to map these mountain passes, knowing that a single slip meant death in the ice. The environment left footprints that are still visible today. Ancient irrigation systems in arid basins show the desperate struggle to sustain life in these harsh zones. But nature was not the only enemy. The road was also a conduit for the invisible killer, disease. The most devastating of all was the Black Death. Modern research and ancient grave markers point to the Tisan Mountains near Lake Issyk-Kul in modern Kyrgyzstan as the origin point of the Second Plague pandemic around 1338. From there, carried by fleas on rats along the caravan routes and later by ships, the plague ravaged the Golden Horde, Constantinople, and eventually wiped out a third to half of Europe's population. The Silk Road facilitated a pandemic that changed the genetic and social structure of humanity. And then there were the human dangers. For centuries, the road was plagued by bandits and slave traders. In the 19th century, Russian soldiers and British officers like James Abbott and Richmond Shakespeare documented the horrors of the slave markets in Khiva and Bukhara, where thousands of Russians and Persians were held in brutal captivity. Spies moved in disguise,
British officers posing as horse traders or pilgrims like Henry Pottinger, who dyed his skin and memorized Muslim prayers to pass through hostile territory undetected. Discovery meant instant execution or rotting in a vermin-filled pit, the fate that befell Colonel Stoddart. The romance of the Silk Road is painted over a canvas of extreme danger.
As we look back, the Silk Road was more than a trade route. It was the world's central nervous system. Its legacy is woven into our daily lives. The paper we write on, the religions we practice, the languages we speak, and even the food we eat bear the marks of this ancient exchange. The Sogdian merchants may be gone, their language largely extinct, but their role in connecting China and the Mediterranean laid the groundwork for the modern global economy. The transmission of Buddhism from India to East Asia shaped the spiritual landscape of half the human population. Even the geopolitical struggles of the past echo today. The Great Game of the 19th century defined the borders of modern Afghanistan, drawn as a buffer between empires. The strategies used then, creating buffer states and securing mountain passes, are mirrored in modern international relations. Today, the Silk Road is being revived. The ancient tracks are being paved over by railways and highways. The concept of the Belt and Road Initiative reflects a desire to reclaim that historic connectivity. But we must remember the lessons of the past. The Silk Road brought wealth, but it also brought conflict and plague. It built empires and destroyed them. The ruins of watchtowers in the Gansu province and the forgotten cities buried beneath the sands of the Taklamakan stand as silent witnesses. They remind us that globalization is not new. For millennia, humanity has been bound together by this road of legends, a road of goods, secrets, and destiny. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.